This time on Captain Cass's laboratory, we're going to be working on the Lemax boat, SS Specter. Alright, so it's plugged in. The green lights come on, the orange lights comes on, but there's no sound and there's no motion. So that pretty much indicates it's got a bad motor. So, we need to get inside. And on most of the boats, not all of them, you get in through the very bottom. Now, when I got this, I started prepping it by peeling back the mat. And on the bottom is the access panel. I didn't take the whole mat off, so I can try and flatten it out and get it back on. But on the bottom, you'll see there's a handful of screws. And then these will go through this hole here. That should allow the entire boat to separate from the base. Should. So I'm getting a magnet for the screws. Some of the boats don't have a rocking base, and they don't, there's no access. It just depends on the boat. Normally, the boats all access from the bottom. Normally. Feel around, check it. They're going to be close or similar. So we're going to remove these 5 screws. I tried to salvage this bottom as much as possible, and there is a couple of small tears like right here. I got this thing nice and toasty and slowly, carefully peeled as much down as I could. Depending on how the mats are stored or how the objects are stored, depends on how easy they'll come off. So, next we're going to feed through. And this white foam you see on the mat, it's just like this foam. It was already stuck there when I started peeling it down. So I'm going to set the base away. So now we can get into the bottom of the boat. So here's the bottom of the boat. Let me get a good grip. This is supposed to rock, and it doesn't. And that's what makes the boat rock. Underneath the rocking plate, I see some screws. Need to see how to get this rocking plate off. All right. 2 pins that you just kind of push one side in and it feeds it out. And then here's the ramps for the mechanism that makes it rock. So it does this, which then pushes the boat back and forth. Once you do that, you have access to the 4 screws. And a lot of overglue. So now we're going to take out the 4 screws. These screws are much smaller, so it doesn't matter. I'm not going to mix them up. I'll know the small screws go here and the big screws go up there. Plus there's 4 of these and 5 of the others. And cook. See, that will just pop off. Alright, so she doesn't pop off. It looks like there might be something holding it in from the inside. Let me take a closer look. I see micro switches and wires. There's the motor. I'm not sure what it's stuck on. it's starting to come out. Okay, so it is stuck on the wires. That's why it started coming out, is because the two wires just disconnected. So this outer edge is glued in. It looks like we're going to have to remove the glue and get this out. We're going to have to anyway because the micro switch that's right here, the wires broke. Not a big issue. That's why they invented solder. See, this glue seems to be pretty decent. Might have to heat it up. Just gonna scrape off some of the top layer and see. Yeah, it's pretty solid stuff. I used to collect the boats when I quit, and I started getting rid of them because at the time I didn't know how to fix these until I started working on different pieces, and I never wanted to try and repair mine. Also, I don't do the pirate thing, although this is a pretty cool looking ship. I didn't have this one, I had several of the others. So I currently have this on the lowest temperature my heat pen goes, which is 100 degrees Celsius. I'm just going around the outside. Let's see if that's good enough. I'm using a small screwdriver because the track that goes around is very narrow. My spudgers are all too big. I did free up some of the glue. Okay, that just popped. Now let's see if I can get the bottom to pop. There we go. And the front. Held up on this side. I think it's just held up by the glue. Yep. Held up by that is a big belt. Look at that. So the red and the black wires go to the micro switches down below, and then these are the black wires that broke. Right there. That's why I quit once I saw it, and that's because all the slack for the wires is glued together right here, which, you know, makes sense. They built this bottom piece, glued them together, shoved it in its hole. Since I've never opened it, I wasn't aware. So, if you want to take those 4 screws out, don't pry on the cover. So I'm going to loosen up these wires so I can get this bottom to slide off, like so. And then I can resolder those 2 right there. So here's the bad motor. Like I said, I believe that is the cause. Now the circuit board is right up in here in the aft of the ship. Trying to see where the wires go, see if there's a plug for the motor. There is not. The only thing that's plugged in appears to be the speaker. Everything else is soldered to the board. So, since I'm going to assume it's a bad motor, because it's not functioning like it's supposed to, I'm going to cut the motor wires. But before I do that, I'm going to hook up the micro switches, or rehook up the micro switch, I guess I should say. Yeah. We got our gear pack right here, and what the micro switch does is the motor turns the gears, goes to the pulley, turns a little gear, works its way through, and then this is just one long bar that goes back and forth, back and forth. It triggers the micro switches. So if the micro switch isn't working, the motor is going to keep turning until it breaks the gears, or burns out the motor, or burns out the belt. I know I'm going to cut the motor wire, but I still want to make sure I get this micro switch hooked up, because this possibly, probably not, but possibly is a resetting piece. So while my soldering gun heats up, or my soldering iron, let's see if I can clean up a little bit more of this glue. Alright, it's up to snuff. There we go. So, wires are resoldered. Like I said, not too big of a deal if they get broke. They're easily attached. Oh. Now, let's cut the motor wires, or at least one of them. Motor's now disconnected. Let's see if we get a little bit more out of the boat. We get lights. Does this have a speaker? I assume it does. It has to. Yeah, speaker's right here. Speaker's in the bow. Well, let's hook up a new motor and see if that motor spins. Because now I'm curious if didn't backfeed it and damage the system. It does happen. It's not very common, but I have come across, I think, 2 or 3 that when the motor's gone bad, it backfed the circuitry and fried part of it. Going to take the motor out so I can verify the RPMs. Most of them say it on the side, but Should be 11,440, but let's take a look. This motor's all covered in soot. It is, yes, SRF 300 CA, 11,440 RPMs. There's that. It's a brand new bag. I think the most recent one that got damaged was the Ghoulish Gourd. Now I'm thinking about it. That video, I needed to get a parts house to get a circuit board out of it because the circuit board lost its sound and lost the ability to send signal to one side. No matter what I did, I could not get power to one side. Usually when you lose your sound, 99% of the time you'll never get it back, unfortunately. Because what happens is it doesn't burn out the amplifier chip, it burns out the leg on the blob chip. So if you guys would stay twisted together, that'd be great. All right. Nope, no movement. Check the power. So I'm getting 0 volts out of the board to the motor. Check this motor with a power supply. Four and a half volts. It is turning. Doesn't sound good, and it's getting warm, which is not good for just 10 seconds of running. This one's just humming. Probably tell it's quieter. It's turning. This motor is on its way. It also has a larger voltage drop. Okay, let's see if we can get the circuitry to come out a little bit. I need to free up these two cables because they're connected to the circuit board and they're glued in right here. So, get rid of that glue cork. Going to unplug the speaker since that's the only thing that plugs in. There is a bundle of wires for the lights that they are all glued together, making it really hard for me to get the circuit board out past the bottom. But I have it in the opening now, right there. I'm going to take a look at it and see if I can see anything. Any burns? See lots of hot glue strings. I wish I could get it out more to see the back. The back looks okay. That's the glue that held the circuit board in. Yeah. That doesn't look good. We have, looks like a possible leaky capacitor that has corroded through the bottom of the board. It doesn't fit in the hole. Just need this wire to stay out of my way for a little bit. Not gonna stay. Gotta have a way to get these wires untangled to give me some slack. 2, 3. That's part of what it was tangled in. More glue. What are we stuck on now? Yeah, definitely got corrosion. So this bigger capacitor right here has leaked through the bottom of the board. And the connection is brown and green and white and disgusting. So it may not function because of the bad capacitor and the corroded junction. But it looks like it may have also got another spot of corrosion on a resistor, maybe from the capacitor leaking and running down. I'm not going to be able to get the components out if I can't get this board out. Except, there we go. Got it. This glue wad right here. Guess I should probably take the good motor and keep it out of the garbage pile of glue. So I'm just going to separate these wires real quick so I can get a decent picture of the board, just in case one breaks, especially since I'm probably going to be soldering on the board here. And then I'll zoom in and show you what I'm looking at. So I got most of the wires out. And we also have a broken wire, which I got to figure out where that goes. Oh, never mind, it's the motor. My bad. Alright, I'm just going to clean as much of this off as possible. So, let's get a picture or two, and then I'll try and zoom into the board. And I'm going to take like 3 or 4. There's a lot of wire soldered onto this thing. There we go. I think the pictures came out okay. Yeah, okay, good. All the pictures I took came out decent, so that way there's no problem. All right. going to try and zoom in now. So this is the capacitor. And there you go. So, can I zoom in some more? Wrong way. I don't know if it's going to focus. Nope. Gotta love technology. Okay. So, right here is green and corroded. Normally when a capacitor fails, the top bulges. The top's not bulged, but apparently it leaked and it ate into the solder. It followed the two connections down. So those two are corroded right there. And then this solder blob's got corrosion on it. And there's one more I saw. Of course, different angles of the dangles. These green, yellow, and purple, which go to your volume switch, have corrosion, probably from the capacitor leaking and then running across the board slowly. So maybe the whole problem is it's got a bad capacitor. I don't know. It's going to be a iffy thing. Unfortunately, not all circuit boards can be repaired. I'm flipping it over because I want to get the speaker unglued so I can take a look at it, because the speaker wire is glued in. The speaker itself really isn't. It's just dangling. Looks like all the glue is broke. So, see if the speaker is blown. Speaker may not work because of that capacitor. Standard 8 ohm, half watt. There's corrosion on the speaker too. I wonder if this got moisture in or near it. There's corrosion everywhere. That's weird. The speaker corrosion is not bad. Doesn't mean it's not on the solder terminals. It's in between. Speaker feels good. Doesn't have any signs of being blown, and the solder joints are good for the incoming cable. Cable's good, pins are in, so I don't think the speaker or lack of volume is related to the speaker. I'm going to say the lack of volume is related to a circuit board failure. Just so you know, this is porcelain. It's got the standard porcelain cracks on the inside too. So this capacitor is a 16 volt 220 microfarad capacitor. So I'm going to have to go through my capacitors and see what I have. Oh, we even have a smoked resistor. Look at that. Now that that's why that connection's got corrosion. All right. Hopefully it'll focus. God, technology. It focuses. It's a little better, but that is a burnt capacitor. Or excuse me, burnt resistor. That resistor literally burned. That's why it's white and covered in powder. I'm going to zoom out and bring the thing up to the camera because that always seems to work better for some reason. Apparently zooming out is not my specialty there. There we go. So if you notice, this resistor, nice and colorful, the one right there. That resistor kind of looks like ash. That's because it is. And that's bad. And that resistor is connected to this bundle of wires. So it needs a capacitor and a resistor. I don't know what the value of that resistor was. I'm just double checking the rest of the board. It is funny. The speaker goes here where it says SP, and that's the M1 for the motor. And yet, they have it soldered to the back instead of using a connector. Sometimes I wonder, because it uses the same kind of connector as the speaker, which would make it so easy to unplug. So I'm going to go and see if I can calculate the value of the resistor. And I'm going to have to go through my capacitors and see what I have for a 16 volt 220 microfarad. It can be 18 volts or 20 volts. The voltage isn't as big of a deal as the microfarads is. Changing the microfarad changes the capacitance, which changes how it functions. So it makes things faster or slower, or causes things to burn, catch fire, or pop. So if I have an 18 volt, or I'm sure 15 would be fine too, since it's a 4 volt system, 4.5. So the motor sounds horrible. It could have backfed the board, but I'm wondering if something else got in here and caused that to burn. LEDs generally don't cause resistors to burn. They're not powerful enough. It does happen. It's not common. But motors, because they draw a much higher amperage, have a tendency to do stuff like this. So this big capacitor is probably the smoothing capacitor for the circuit, and it failed because the motor is, well, it sounds horrible and it draws more power. Resistor, I'll have to trace the tracks, see where they go, but let's see. That is the third hole over. So that goes to that resistor, and this one goes to it goes to the blob chip. That's never a good sign. So this leg that comes off here goes into about the 4th pin on this blob chip. So there's a good chance this will never function correctly again. But we're not going to give up yet, and I'm going to try and figure out what this should be based on the other resistors on the board and guess. I mean, that's all I can do. And then I'm going to go through my capacitors. I got to find my capacitor bucket and, well, see what I got for capacitors. So we're going to stop right here so I can sit down and study this circuit board. And then we'll swap out that leaky capacitor, and then we'll replace the resistor with my best educated guess on what it should be. So shall return in just a few. All right, we're back, and I let the owner know what was wrong with the boat and that it may never be back to original specs, meaning that it may not have sound, and I might be able to get it to rock, but can't guarantee what functions will be back. This has a return period from wherever they purchased it from, which is basically just a few more days. And since there's a chance that me doing this or continuing may inflict more damage because I'm not sure what caused it to burn, we're just going to go ahead and send it back so she can get a refund on the boat. So it is back reassembled. So you can see the base is reattached, and I went ahead and glued the bottom back on with a little heat to help smooth out the wrinkles from the foam rubber being stretched. So the original motor is back in here. It has been soldered back onto its original wires, and the heat shrink so there's no arcing or shorting if they try to plug it in and see what's going on with it. The circuit board, the speaker, and that base has all been hot glued back in, so that's good to go. It's all been reattached. So it's the same way I took it apart, just backwards. So just watch the video in reverse. I'll show you how to put it back together. Technically, when I was putting this back together, you don't have to take this bottom piece off, the rubber mat. I noticed this when I was putting it together. If your boat is tipped enough to one side where you can see the white plate, you can get in there with a screwdriver and push the tab in and pull this off of that white plate. Now the only issue is this, because these wires are right here and they go through, so you might have to peel this back to get some slack in the wires. But you could technically remove this boat without unscrewing those 5 screws underneath the foam. Didn't realize that until I was putting it back together, and it popped out. I'm like, oh, hey, look at that. You can actually get to it. So this video isn't a repair, but how to take it apart. So if you have to take it apart, it's an 11,440 RPM motor, which is an SRF 300CA. It's a large belt. I think they call it a 50 or 60 millimeter. And the gears are pretty standard that you'll get in like the what you see on the edge here, the Akoi, or however it's pronounced, gear kit. So if the circuit board's smoked, that's a completely different story. If your LEDs are bad or you got 1 or 2 that are out, you can dig them out of the porcelain and replace them. So, and you saw the speaker's back here, and right, no, speakers, I forgot now. But the speaker's a standard Lemax speaker, and it plugs in. And if your motor breaks and you have a spare 2-pin Molex connector, I'd recommend plugging it in instead of soldering it to the back of the board, just so you can disconnect it for ease of use. So especially if the motor shorts out and you just want it to light up and make sounds, you can just unplug it and you don't have to cut the wires. But that's me. So if you have one of those 2-pin Molexes laying around from a parts house, or you ordered one, or if you're like me and literally just have them laying around, I would switch it over to one of those. But again, personal preference. It's a little more work, not necessary, just ease for repair in the future. So this is how to disassemble the SS Specter, and in this case, not fix it. Hopefully it gave you some insight on how to disassemble the boats. I'm not a big fan of the boats as far as how they are put together, because it's tight quarters inside of the hull. And of course this base, sometimes this base lights up, which means you got wires and lights going into the base, which adds 1 extra layer of difficulty. That micro switch you saw was repaired, so be careful. When they're glued in or stuck in, you might not be able to take pieces off because they hot glued the wires on the inside, so you have no slack. So at least you know for the future. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Till the next repair or disassembly, have a good one.